I'll watch it twice, I guess. There we go. Trying to see if I see any tears in your eyes. Getting ready for the Super Bowl. Wouldn't it be fun to create a commercial like that, like a commercial that moves you? Yeah, that's good. So we have our Super Bowl weekend coming up. Make sure you get ready for that weekend. We're going to have, as Mitchell said, a tailgate afterward. We'll have at least some hot dogs, probably something else to eat, along with all the dip, the good dip that you bring. Somebody told me this morning, I don't know what dip I'm going to make, but I'm willing to pay somebody to make some really good dip. So just make sure you bring chips with your dip. Otherwise, we'll be sticking our fingers in whatever you've made and just tasting it that way. I believe JC's really excited to be like the top judge, to be able to decide whether or not the dip is the dominant one or not. So make sure you come that weekend. It's going to be a fun weekend. We are going to use commercials. I'm going to choose one commercial to be able to wonder, can God say anything to us through a Super Bowl commercial? I believe there is a message in it, so you have to be curious enough to come and check it out and see. You know, growing up in church, the church that I grew up in, we would talk about being saved. And I remember I had this one friend of mine, and we called him Catfish, which is probably not the most flattering nickname now that I look back. He got the nickname Catfish because we were at a youth event, and there were probably, I don't know, 300 or 400 people at this youth event, all teenagers, and they had a competition. And if you've ever been to a youth event in church, youth pastors come up with crazy ideas, and some of them have been legally banned because they're very dangerous. This particular game that we played was who wants to come up and drink whatever we put into a blender on stage. That was the game that the youth pastors created. And it started off with, I could probably do that. And so people were like, yeah, I'll do that. And it just kept getting worse. And what the kid from my youth group volunteered, watching this happen, to go up and drink a smoothie of, included a fish that had like scales on it. It hadn't been completely taken down to just the meat. It was scales and everything. And they had a couple fish that they were making. And so they had an extra one. And as he drank the stuff and ran out of the building, because you know he's not going to be able to hold that down, somebody else grabbed the extra fish, one of the teenagers. And all of a sudden, we're in a room, and fish starts flying all over the room. The teenagers are throwing it back and forth across the aisleway, and there's this gigantic fan in the ceiling. And we all know what's about to happen. Chopped up fish on top of teenagers' heads was maybe one of the most funny memories I've ever had in youth ministry. And that's why we don't send our kids to camp anymore. That's why. My kids have never been. Maya doesn't like my jokes. But this friend of mine who was Catfish, we called him Catfish because he ate the fish. And we're like, that's your name from now on, you're Catfish. And I'll never forget how many times, you know, where we grew up, we would have altar calls, and we would go up and we would pray for one another. And most of the time the altar call was come and accept Jesus. And multiple times, we would watch him leave the seat and go to the altar to pray. And we thought, well, he had already done this. So we're wondering, I wonder what he's going to pray about this time. And almost every single time, we would get to him, and he would look at us with the same face. And so I think it was authentic, the same face, and like have this big smile, and he'd be like, I'm saved. And we would be so excited for him. We were just wondering, we thought you already got saved. Like the first time we were hoping it would stick. And I'm not so much making fun of him, but I want to take a moment real quick to explain theologically and biblically really what does it mean to be saved. Because we talk about that word. I'm saved. Like, what is salvation? And it's tied to a concept. It's tied to a concept that we see Jesus like using words with his first followers. And what he says to his followers is, come follow me. And everything that I know about the scripture, to be saved means to follow Jesus. But what ends up happening in that moment where you realize, like, I'm somebody who, I can't make sense of God, I don't understand religion, all of a sudden you're like, I want to do this. I want to be somebody who can say, I'm saved. Or I want to be able to say, I have salvation in my life. Really what being saved is God awakening in you a desire for the life that you were meant to live. And so we see that in the story of the prodigal son. The story of the prodigal son is the son who goes to his dad. He has an inheritance that he knows he's going to get from his dad. And so he says to his dad, hey, Dad, can I get the inheritance early? He takes the inheritance, he goes off, and he spends all of that he has. And he ends up in a situation like with the pigs in their slop and has no food, no place to live. And he realizes this is not the life I was meant to live. And what it tells us in the story of the prodigal son is that it's the hunger in his gut that starts to help him realize and awaken inside of him a desire for something better than what he's experiencing. And so in that moment, we see him think about his dad, and what he thinks about his dad is, well, my dad feeds the servants, so he'll certainly feed me if I come home to him. And so he gets up from the slop, turns from where he is, and goes home. And that is the moment in the prodigal story where you would have to say he was saved. Because all of a sudden, what awakened in him is, this is not the life that I was supposed to live. This isn't it. This can't be as good as it gets. The choices that I'm making, the decisions that I have come to, the lifestyle that I'm living, this can't be it. This can't be the best. And God's Spirit, this is what I believe, God's Spirit, which we call the Holy Spirit, is always working on all of us, all of the time, to awaken us to this reality, that there is something better. That what you're living now is not the best. And it's not because necessarily you've done anything wrong, but because you've ended up where you are. And so to be saved is to realize where I am now can't be the best. And God has given me a desire for something more. And Jesus came into this world to break the power of sin that keeps you in that place of slop thinking this is as good as it gets. And that's why I don't like the phrase, it is what it is. I don't like that phrase. Because that's not why Jesus came into this world, to just let you live in the reality of whatever your reality is. Jesus came into this world to awaken us to realize that there is something better. And to be saved is to be saved from the resignation that life is as good as it gets. And so really to be saved is to say, I'll stop following my own way. That's repentance. I'll stop following my own way. And I'll follow the way that follows Jesus. So to be saved is to turn away from yourself and to turn toward Jesus. And to pray the prayer that we've been taught, hey, God, the sinner's prayer, forgive me of my sins, is just a verbal way of saying, I want to follow you. I don't believe you have to pray those specific words. I think you have to follow the desire. And if you say the words to solidify it, I think that's great. But I know a lot of Christians who realize just like that prodigal son in that moment this is not it. I have to follow something better. And that thing that I have to follow better is Jesus. Then that's what it means to receive Jesus' salvation. I don't know if it would be possible if Jesus hadn't come and broken the power of sin. And so what I'm going to talk about today in this message is inviting you further into what it means for your life to be saved by Jesus. Because when Jesus says, come follow me, what he's saying is pay attention to my life. Like listen to what I've done. See where I have been. Follow the direction that I'm pointing you in. And so today what I'm going to say to you is there's something important that we can listen to with regard to the life of Jesus, which is recorded to us in the Bible. Like that's the value of the Bible, that we get the whole story of the history of God's people, which includes Jesus. And it shows us when he comes into this world and does what he does, he breaks us free from being held bound to what is pressing down on us so that we can have a change in our lives. That he shows us through the life that he lives, this is what it looks like. And so I know every single year, at least I think I know every single year, that the majority of us as human beings, we feel this desire to experience something better in our lives, better health, better well-being. And it's like suddenly at the turn of the new year, all of a sudden we're thinking about our life a little bit differently. We're awakened to this thought that I want to start meeting my needs. I want to start fulfilling my calling and my purpose in this world. I want to be somebody who gets to experience some level of enjoyment in this life. And so often our response to that realization is that we start to set goals. I'm sure some of you have goals that you've already given up on statistically. Like, you've no longer just cut out sugar anymore. I know, like, I see floating around out there on, I don't know, like social media post or more like news feed for me because I don't look at social media like January is supposedly the dry month where everybody's trying to give up alcohol and they make it about 3 or 4 days. And that's not judgment on you. I'm just saying we set goals and we make promises and commitment to ourselves, and those things are with good intention. It's like all of a sudden we get this renewed energy that we want to pursue some positive change in our lives. That's what we want at the new year. Yet the reality is not many of us see a turnaround for the better really happening, which I think causes most of us to question why. Why every year do I set goals and nothing changes? I mean, some of you buy a new planner every year, thinking this is the year the planner's going to work. Some of you get scammed into buying a workout plan, and you think that's going to be the thing that gets you to the gym. It just means that you have some emails that are sent to you telling you need to go to the gym. Like some of you, you're here and you're like, man, if I could just get on the right diet, but then, you drive past Lovebird and you have to pull in. Like you have to go eat at Lovebird, the dirty birdie fries. Everybody wants them, minus the scallions. My kids won't eat the scallions. But we make these commitments and we have these promises to ourselves and they don't seem to work out. And so we have to wonder why, why? And so I started a study a couple weeks ago to help us explore and maybe think about and answer why. Why doesn't my life change? Why don't things seem to get improved to anything better? And the argument that I'm making in this study, which I find in the scriptures, is the reason why our life doesn't change, even though we make these commitments, is because we are not any closer to allowing ourselves to feel what we're meant to feel in this lifetime. And so what I've labeled or titled this study is Permission to Feel. You have permission to feel. I believe that as you look at the scriptures, Jesus actually gives you permission to feel. That's a part of you being saved from believing you can't feel. And the big idea behind this study that's really important for you to grasp is this concept that God made us with emotions. You have emotions. I don't think you can argue with me that you don't have emotions, which makes it really difficult if we have emotions to have the concept that God didn't make us with them. And so if God made us with emotions, then you kind of have to follow the trail that says God made us with these emotions, and these emotions are meant for something. And so what I would like to say is that the emotions are meant to draw you away from what's destructive and drive you toward what brings well-being in your life. But here's the thing. You have to feel the emotion in order to follow its God-given wisdom. And every man in the room doesn't believe me right now. Because you have been told, don't feel. So last week, I started, if you weren't here, you missed it. You have to watch it back. I don't know. But I talked about the emotion of anger. A lot of angry people walked out of here after that message. This week, we're going to talk about a different emotion. We're going to talk about excitement. Did you know that excitement is considered one of the 7 primary emotions? Did you know that? Excitement? I had no clue. Like excitement? Okay. And did you know that most people's view of excitement has been shaped by a culture that says that it's bad, that excitement is bad? Like expressing excitement on a whole is not something that people encourage you to do. Most of the time, when it comes to excitement, people are giving you reasons why it's unacceptable. And so you really should avoid it. So I wonder if there's a story that you can remember in your lifetime, a moment when you felt the urge, like, I want to be excited, but I can't, so I have to shove it down. Anybody ever had that moment in your life? I might be the only one, so I'm going to tell you a story of my own life. There's one story in particular that rises to the surface that's really easy for me to access. And forgive me for talking about basketball, but it was a big part of my life. I was a sophomore in high school, and we were playing in the district tournament, which is a big deal. And it got to the 4th quarter, and we were 3 points away from, like, tying the game. time was ticking down, and so our coach called a timeout, and the coach drew up a play, and that play was designed for me to attempt the game-tying shot, which is like what I dreamed of in my life growing up. I can't wait for the moment I get to catch the ball and try to make it and be like Michael Jordan. That's all I wanted to do. And so the coach called the play. We came in, we executed the play. They passed the ball to me. Somehow I was open enough to be able to catch it, shoot it, and I made the shot and got fouled. So I have a picture of it I wanted to show you on the screen behind me. So that is the literal shot that I took that I'm talking about. And so I was like trying to remember, who did we play? We were playing a team that is called Miami Trace. And Miami Trace, their head coach was our former head coach, who had been dismissed for doing something inappropriate. Don't know how he got a job at that school, but somehow he got a job at that school. So for us to beat him was a really big deal. I make the shot, tie the game. There's a few seconds left. Now I get to go to the foul line to take the game-winning shot, which I had practiced since like 3rd or 4th grade. And how I practiced that from like the 3rd or 4th grade is to have my buddies come over and try to distract me as I would practice shooting foul shots. My buddies would do things that are way inappropriate to get me to not make a foul shot. They would make noises. They would just, I don't know, I can't even go there. They would do all kinds of things. And so I was ready to be under pressure. And so as I stood up to the foul line, the other team's crowd is going crazy, wanting to distract me. And so I take the foul shot and I make the foul shot. And we go up by 1 point with just a few seconds to go. The other team inbounds the ball. It doesn't really go anywhere. Time runs out, and we win. And I'm standing at midcourt, and I look, and I see my entire team. And then all this crowd of fans running toward me. And they swarm me, and they tackle me, and they take me to the ground. You all have seen this, I'm sure, before in a sporting event. They tackled me, took me to the ground, and then there's like a mosh pit of other people celebrating that we won. And you would think that I would be excited. But instead, my body went stiff and cold. Like I had no expression on my face. I didn't say anything and I didn't make any noise as people are piling on top of me. The memory that I have that comes to mind was me thinking to myself, don't make this a big deal because it looks foolish to over-celebrate something. Like something inside of me was saying, don't let yourself look like you feel excited. Everybody else felt it, and I felt like I couldn't. I didn't know back then. I didn't know this back then. Even though I went to church, right? Like I went to church, Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night, revival, church camp, caravan. Everything you can do, I was at church. I grew up in church, and at that point, I had never heard somebody tell me that the emotion of excitement is a good emotion that God had given me. In my experience, what I was taught or come to believe is that to show emotion in front of other people is prideful and selfish. People don't do that. Like, I remember watching football games and people dancing in the end zone, and my family would be like disgusted by it. Like, oh, I can't believe they're dancing in the end zone. Like Refrigerator Perry just doing his thing. And we'd be like, we don't do that. We don't celebrate like that. So I didn't want to be the person on the basketball court who looked really arrogant or like I was showing out to everybody else because something great and fun and exciting just happened, so I held it in. I wonder if you have ever been told that the emotion of excitement is a good emotion that God has given you. I wonder if you've ever been told that the emotion of excitement is an emotion that God has given you to move you toward good things. Has anybody ever told you in your life the purpose of emotion? And told you that it's something that you are meant to feel? It's an emotion meant to give you a rush of energy that drives you down pathways that God uses to expand your world and your life. Has anybody ever told you that it's an emotion designed to cause a surge of anticipation in you for something you get to do or experience? And it could be as simple as riding a wave at the Cocoa Beach Pier. It could be something as small as winning a middle school volleyball championship with the team for the first time in decades at that school. Or in the context of Jesus' followers in the Gospel of Luke, it could be as significant as working against the plan and the power of evil. What I'm trying to say to you is the emotion of excitement in its purest, God-given form is a burst of vibrancy with regard to an opportunity. In particular, the opportunity that God gives you to move closer to change and to growth and to healing, not just in your life, but in the lives of those around you. And so what I see as I go to the scriptures in Luke chapter 10 is that we're offered a story when Jesus encourages his disciples to feel excitement. Like there is a story, at least one, where Jesus sees his disciples excited and he encourages their excitement. And I want you to see that with me. So go with me to the Gospel of Luke chapter 10. I'm going to read verses 1 through 3. Then I'll jump down and read verses 17 through 20. This is what it says in verse 1. It says, after this, the Lord, meaning Jesus, appointed 70 others and sent them on ahead of him in pairs to every town and placed where he himself intended to go. He said to them, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go on your way. See, I am sending you out like lambs into the midst of wolves. Jump down to verse 17. Those 70 return. It says they returned with joy, excitement, saying, Lord, in your name, even the demons submit to us. He said to them, I watched Satan fall from heaven like a flash of lightning. See, I have given you authority to tread on snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice at this, that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. Jesus chooses 70 people. There's probably 75 of you here right now. Jesus chooses 70 people and then commissions them to go do a work. And it's intended to be the kind of work that signals to the world around them that, according to verse 9, the kingdom of God has come near. Their work is meant to go out and tell the story of the goodness of God in this land that we are living in. And so the scary part about this commission that God gives the 70, he says to them in verse 3 is that I'm sending you out like lambs among wolves, which to me sounds like an underdog story. Because what are the odds that 2 by 2 lambs going out amongst a bunch of wolves are going to survive or be able to overcome the odds? Well, for me, I'm convinced that the scary part of an underdog story is what gets you to engage with the story. Meaning, whenever you watch a movie or you read a book or any kind of story that you're looking at or trying to get some enjoyment out of, you will stay engaged with the story because there's a character or characters who need to overcome the odds. And you will stay with that story so that you can see how are they going to do the impossible. So think about it. An underdog story needs to be up against a really big challenge or have this enormous opportunity in order to have any kind of reason to move toward it and actually risk it. So think about this gospel story. Before Jesus tells them about the scary part, first he tells them about what I am calling the opportunistic part. Because in verse 2, what he tells them is this. He says this to them. He says, The harvest is plentiful, and the laborers are few. It's strawberry season in Florida. That would be like me telling you, man, there is a field of strawberries. I don't know if you like strawberries. I know it's kind of like hit or miss, but imagine I told you there's a field of strawberries. They are ripe and red. They're the best tasting strawberries you could ever eat. Nobody knows about it. You can go there and be the only one to pick as many as you want. Jesus is saying the harvest is plentiful. There's a lot that can be picked or harvested. And there's not a lot of people who are going out to it who know about it. So Jesus says to his disciples, go. Which is another way of saying, hey, the circumstances are like prime. And the opening for you to go do it is really clear. And it's just yours for the taking. So if that was you and you're one of the 70 and Jesus has just told you, you have this enormous opportunity to reap this amazing circumstance, you would be excited. Like, this is it. Like if I told you there was a job, you could make $500,000 and nobody else is going to take it. So if you take it, it's yours. You would be so excited. And so Jesus is like, there's this great opportunity and it's yours for the taking. You just have to go. So they're excited. And what we see is it's their excitement despite the fear that causes them to say, I'm willing to go do that. And so the 70 go out 2 by 2 in the places where Jesus is planning to go, and they do what Jesus has sent them out to do. So then you jump down to verse 17. Remember, they're being sent out like lambs among wolves. They return. In verse 17, we see them return, and then we get to notice what they're bringing with them as they return. And what it tells us is that they return to Jesus full of joy. Now, you could get excited if I told you you could take a job that would give you $500,000, but if I told you the odds of you succeeding in that job are next to none, now you're going to feel afraid. Like you're going to have to go up against some really difficult things. And so they go out and they do this and they return, and surprisingly, they return with joy. And what they say to Jesus is, in your name, even the demons submit to us. And then we see Jesus' response. And Jesus' response is encouraging the joy that they're feeling. Jesus is like, yes, I watched as Satan fell. I saw you with the authority that I gave to you, and you stood against all the powers of evil, and nothing is going to hurt you. And so what we notice as these 70 people return, having done something very terrifying, they return to Jesus, all excited about what they have done, and Jesus doesn't squash it. Jesus doesn't look at them and like, why are you acting so happy about this? Like, why are you excited? Why are you so full of joy? Jesus doesn't squash their vibrancy. He actually applauds their use of the authority that was given to them to do what God called them to do. He's applauding them. I mean, wouldn't it be nice, everyone, if when you came home from work, your family applauded for you? A good job today. You did it. You beat the odds. Amazing. Kids, wouldn't it be amazing? You came home from school, regardless of the grades you got, and your parents were like clapping for you, like, amazing. Confetti as you walk in the house. Jesus sees their joy, and he encourages it. And we kind of get caught up in that phrase where he says, do not rejoice, because we think he's saying that as like a blanket statement. But what he's saying is, don't rejoice in this thing, but rejoice. Don't rejoice in what's happening to the demons. Rejoice in what's happening for you, which is your name is being written in heaven. By encouraging their excitement, what we see happen is that Jesus emboldens these 70 to lean further into the moment, which expands the fulfillment of a calling that God has placed on their lives. And in this story, here's what we learn. We learn something about the purpose of feeling excitement. The purpose of feeling excitement isn't to be prideful by showing off to others. That's kind of what I came to believe. That's not the purpose of excitement. The purpose of excitement is to move us towards something good that God wants to give to us. And what I mean by that is you are meant to be present with excitement as a way to gain a burst of energy for the opportunities that God is giving you. Otherwise, you won't take them. And so here's the invitation. When the emotion of excitement emerges, realize that Jesus gives you permission to feel it and turn toward it. Turn toward it. Mitchell's really hoping that the Kansas City Chiefs win tonight. I don't know who you all are hoping will win tonight. He's like right where I was. Ohio State won, baby. You can hate me all you want. It won't change until next year. Mitchell's hoping the same thing. If they win the Super Bowl, we expect him to come here excited. That's not happening tonight. Maybe in a couple weeks. I want you to lean into your excitement. You know, most people won't feel excited because they're worried about what the people around them will think. When it should be the opposite. The people around us should be saying, get excited. Get excited at this thing that you did. Get excited about this opportunity that you have. Get excited. Like, we're excited for you. I wish somebody would have told me in that moment, it would have been okay for me to jump up and run around the gym. You know, that's never happened in my life since then. That people would rush toward me in excitement and surround me and take me to the ground and be like, be excited, Coy, like we want to be excited with you. Nobody's done that. That may be my only moment in my life to truly have people say, get excited. I wish the church was a place where we could show up together and say to one another, hey, you have a reason to be excited. We see it in you. The fact that you woke up this morning after what happened yesterday, that gets me excited. Or the fact that you made it to retirement and you're not hopeless. You made it. That's excitement. But here's the thing, like there are little moments that you have that God gives you to feel excitement and you just push them away. And so what I want you to do today is when you feel that emotion emerge, turn toward it. And when you turn toward it, I want you to notice what's happening internally on the inside of you, because what you may notice is one of two things. You may notice that there's a rising up in you. Like, yes, I want to do that again. Or you may find that there's a pressing in and a sinking down. And so as you notice, like this emotion of excitement is emerging and I'm not really sure what to do with it because I want to get excited and let it out, but I also maybe don't know if it's okay if I should do that. And so as you notice what's happening inside of you, here's the voice of Jesus that I want you to hear. He's trying to save you from numbing yourself to an emotion that you're meant to feel. I want you to hear the words of Jesus saying to you, it's okay to be excited. God made you this way. Please stay with it because it's going to expand you and your life into a place where you get to experience more growth, more change, more healing. I don't think this year will be any better than last year if you don't allow yourself to feel any more excited than you were yesterday. And so here's my challenge for you. My challenge for you this week is to take a moment to make note of when you sense the feeling of emotion, the feeling of excitement emerging. Take note of it. And by take note of it, I want you to actually write about it, like one sentence or two, describing why all of a sudden you're feeling some excitement. And then as you write that down, I want you to potentially put one of two words next to that statement. I want you to write the word shame, or I want you to write the word encouragement. So if you'll stop when you start to feel it come to the surface, notice what it's doing inside of you. Write down why that's coming up, and then think about, do I feel the urge to move away from it and deny it? If you do, write the word shame. But if all of a sudden you feel this rush of energy to want to tell somebody and express it with them, then I want you to write the word encouragement. And I want you to notice the invitation that God gives to you to feel. When we started this church, 2016, the first night that we had church on a Saturday night, I wasn't sure what to expect, because we were coming out of a situation where most people who were a part of the group of people who were going to begin as Somos Church, they felt like throwaways. That's how they felt. They felt like throwaways. And so they were like, Coy, we want to keep Saturday night church. And I was like, okay, I'll find one for you somewhere else in town. And they're like, what about if you do it? And I was like, I don't know if I can get excited about that. And that's honesty. I was like, I don't know. It was more like fear rose up inside of me. And then we got to that first night. I really had no idea what the attendance would be like. I was hoping maybe 50 people would show up and we might be able to build something from there. And the first night that we had Somos Church, like 350 people came. And then I had another church leader say, you're not going to make it 2 years. He's not my friend anymore. Sometimes I forget that Somos Church started in 3 weeks. I forget. 3 weeks. Start a business in 3 weeks, anybody in this room, I dare you. I forget that we happened in 3 weeks. I went to a parking lot of a church that we could potentially rent, and I just cried because I was like, this is it. And then they rejected us and said, no, this is not it. I forget that we've been alive and around and doing work and serving Lakeland and caring for one another and paying attention to one another's stories since 2016. And so it's often hard for me to get excited. Some of you were with me in the beginning. Like, you have been sitting in these seats at the different places we have gone. You have seen people come. You have seen people go. One of my daughters said this week that she got upset with a friend of hers or somebody at school because they were talking about church, and they said, Kira, where do you go? And she said it, and they were like, oh, that's still around? I thought that place was abandoned. But we have a reason sometimes here at Somos Church to feel excitement. And the excitement that I feel like we have to be able to notice and to engage is, I'm pretty sure since the beginning, we have been the underdogs. We have been a group of people who have had to overcome some significant odds. That doesn't make us better. It just makes it our story. And in our story, maybe like your own story, you have had moments when people have said to you, you're not going to make it. You don't have what it takes. There's no way you're going to survive. This opportunity that you have is too big. The challenges are too great. But then God says, if you'll just step into it in my trust and believe there's something good that will come, you will have moments to get excited. I have no idea how long this church will exist in this place. I just know this. I don't want to miss the moments that God gives us to be able to celebrate and get excited about the good work that God does in your life, in my life, and the lives of those around us. So today, my invitation to you and your own story is, can you quiet the voices that say avoid it and surround yourself with the voices that say, get up off the ground, let's dance together. And let it move you deeper into the challenges that God has given you to expand God's kingdom right here on this earth. Stand with me, let's pray. God, the 70 were terrified despite the initial excitement. The opportunity was ripe, but the challenges were great. But what we see is deep faith, trust. And Jesus, in those moments, I gotta believe that your Spirit came alongside them as they were walking 2 by 2 into places where they were overwhelmed by what was in front of them. I have to imagine that in those moments, your grace came and saved them from turning away, saved them from giving up, saved them from being swallowed and overwhelmed by the impossibility that seemed to be in front of them. You kept them through your Spirit from turning back to places they know they were not meant to be in, and turned them toward places that were adventurous and courageous and did something great into this world. And so God, today, we can look at that story and say, man, they have reason to be excited. God, I pray that you would give each one of us here permission to be excited, to feel excitement, even when the things feel small, like waking up in the morning and going to my kids and telling them, I am so sorry for what I did yesterday, and noticing that in our kids, they accept the offer of repair. That's something to get excited about. Or God, maybe it's an opportunity to step into something we never believed we could. So be with us today, God, as we close here together in a song, and then take a moment to encourage others. In your name we pray, amen.